Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I've been involved in this area of consciousness machines, radionic machines, the actual control of matter through machines and consciousness for over 40 years now, and was really the pioneer in non-medical radionics, working at that time with different types of simplistic but very typical tuning machines, which are haven't come very far since then until recently, with some new breakthroughs in technology that I have discovered and have been working on for the last 10 to 20 years to bring to a certain level where they become more and more effective. Anything that's based on human consciousness alone and the interaction with the essence of life, which is occultons that are then formed into physical matter by either on their own or with the assistance of psions, which is your actual personal consciousness, is quite an amazing thing to do. And it is quite, to the point, even frightening, to the point of what someone can do with very simple instruments to control life. Now, understanding the entire way the universe works is extremely critical. What's frightening about it is the fact that it is so easy to create physical matter and to affect physical matter. This has been going on for many, many years in many different forms. Now, we can talk about the regular new ones using the consciousness radionic type machines, which have been around in their present form for about 100 years. But let's go way back before that. Ancient mystery schools were molding occultons into their desires for thousands of years. Anytime someone does something of a, quote, psychic nature using any kind of psychic abilities, they are tapping into, and especially if they're trying to make something happen, which is really what your manifesting sciences are all about. You're creating energy fields to change matter into what you want it to be. So this, of course, when you get into things that are not straightforward, meaning changing something physical into something else physical, is very hard to judge. You're interacting with the giant cosmos and individual people with all their individual problems. Most people, quite frankly, are kind of odd and weird. It's amazing the world works at all when you look at the kind of problems. And of course, I think this is all part of the reality to control this kind of technology. But, it appears that a very fringe group of people tend to get into these kind of sciences because of the fact that they don't think that there's credibility to it. And of course, this is all set up that way. So the common schmientist, of course, doesn't in any way really get it. And should they? Should they be guiding, as they have been doing for thousands of years, guiding corrupt military leaders, corrupt leaders in general? Should high technologies of such potency be given to such a garbage group of people? Well, I think not. And of course, that's why religions started, etc., and why there are priesthoods and why things are complicated. If you were to access awesome abilities, which generally was done more in a spiritual manner, whether it was a god or a spirit, you had to go through some pretty arcane rituals. You had to actually do rituals, purify yourself. Now, if you look at the shamans who have awesome abilities, and they do, it's been verified time and time again. If you want to believe little turds that are called skeptics and dumb bunkers, well, I mean, you're really the lowest form of commonness out there. Buying into these untrained idiot buffoons is just the lowest consciousness you can get. Followed right behind them are the parapsychologists and regular scientists, who somehow want to explain everything away, but do it from the controlled science viewpoint. I went to school to learn how to be a shaman. Yeah, here's my degree. Yeah, College of Stupidity. They gave me an award. It says shaman on it. So the whole idea is that these people who think that they can somehow comprehend the realities of true life because the colleges that teach all the fraud have verified them because there's some weirdo in that college that decided to give you some sort of degree. Well, this is the essence of nonsense, because when you're going up through a system that brainwashes you, there's no escaping it, which we can see from the parapsychologists who really, as I said, are just one step, a tiny step above dumb bunkers and skeptics. They've done nothing. They postulate all the time, afraid to do anything because, does that fit into regular science? Oh, you mean the science that doesn't work. But you want those people to verify you when they don't get it. And of course, there's even those boobs out there that have certificates from colleges that don't ever teach that subject matter, but somebody was able to give you a certificate because they pushed it through in the hippy-dippy 60s. Yeah, man. With a hippy-dippy 60s, you're going to get a witchcraft certificate. Woo! Oh, well, that terrorist mechanic, I picked up trash on the beach and they gave me a certificate. I'm now a shaman. This is the kind of nonsense that we get into. Now, we're never going to bridge past this. These statements probably you don't understand listening to this. It takes a very high consciousness person to do this. But that consciousness was not developed in the laboratories of the inadequate and impotent, otherwise known as universities. No, it wasn't. As a matter of fact, it was rejected from that, as society rejects the people and organizations that believe in all this. So you're only going to grow in a rejected alternative society, figuring out what the reality is because you're not in that system for one reason or another. Which, of course, is a blessing if you're seeking truth in life. If you're seeking a certificate to get a job at some place that's going to brainwash you, well, then that's a blessing, I guess. But these systems are set to get rid of people, to harass you, to make sure that you are not successful. And, of course, they have all their people involved in that, that make sure that they label you either directly or indirectly, from their criminal police departments to their criminal militaries to their criminal governmental people who work for a rotting, disgusting system, who make sure they label you as an outcast for one reason or another. So, because of this, you then are isolated. And if you're smart enough to get by one way or another and then continue on the path, which very, very few can, you will then reach very high states of consciousness. But you're not going to do that within a governmental system, especially the more you get involved in it. If you do what you have to do to get your little certificates so you can get your little certificate jobs, well, this is generally recommended because that's what society requires. So it's difficult to completely be outside of society. How do you survive? How do you have a job? Well, you can't. So you need to make money, and of course that's why nothing ever changes, because everybody's stuck in these systems. Now, once those few that have done that, and even when these people tend to share, write books and everything else, they're not really recognized very well. Maybe they build a slight following, maybe they don't, but they really don't get anywhere and they don't do too well. They have to figure out how to use their abilities on their own to empower themselves, if that's what it comes down to. So the actual process of all this is quite advanced in the fact that as it was done in priesthoods, as you had to go through cleansing rituals and so forth, the process of connecting to these energies out there, and there seems to be kind of two distinct energies, but they combine into one somehow, and this is still kind of the unknown about it. We certainly know that there, and have proven that there are occultons that form physical matter, and they control what physical matter does. Now, to what degree and to what extent? Well, we have not really done the enough research to prove that. It appears that these occultons can affect physical matter and transmute them into other matter. Very interesting. Now, how much difference, we don't know. Based in this entire understanding, you can transmute any physical matter into any other physical matter by telling it to reshape itself. Simple as plain and simple as is thought of in science fiction as a replicator. Now, these things have been breached in places of fiction and in TV series like Star Trek. It replicates. Now, what would a replicator be? Well, a replicator would be a occulton machine that reforms the energy field from the neutral state of making things into a specific state of whatever it is that you desire. And this can be on many levels. Again, you can think physically. A replicator was used in, I believe, Star Trek, the TV series, for food. It would replicate a hamburger or replicate carrots. So all of this would be the way it would work. But that's a very simplistic way of looking at things. These are the crude manifestations of this type of energy. There are many different levels of replication. Life is not made up of physical realities. You need physical things to work with to a degree, but ultimately life is about what? Life is about, well, do you have success energies around you? Because these are the people that take mediocre to terrible products, Steve Jobs, and make them into big corporations. And the people behind these things tend to be kind of little-minded goofballs. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Branson from Virgin. I mean, these people are not very intelligent. They really have achieved nothing. Bill Gates stated that the internet would never make it. He thought DOS was wonderful. Steve Jobs meant pretty cabinets for little boxes. We put boxes in here. I mean, he never figured anything out. Well, let's paint, instead of having a white or black, we'll paint something red. Well, aesthetics is nice, but that certainly is not an advanced viewpoint. Taking already known technologies like audio tapes, CDs, and then putting them on a memory chip so that we have actual recordings. Is that a breakthrough? Well, that's ridiculous. So we go on and on. Branson has stated that he considers himself semi-retarded because he's so dyslexic. Yet he's a billionaire. So why are these people having? Well, they have these special energy forms around them to give them success, even to overcome what are quite strong inabilities and quite stupidity. So understanding all that, this is what you want to break down. So you want to surround yourself with that, but it becomes more complicated than that when you're manifesting at higher levels. You can have billionaire energies around you and you're working at Walmart. What's going to happen? Well, maybe you'll rise to be a manager in a department or something else. Maybe even store manager. But you're not going to become a billionaire, not unless you're out doing other things. So it's complicated. There is more than one factor here. There's one thing's happened to another. So Steve Jobs met Wozniak, who made everything, who then hired all the techs to make the products. So the point is, without that physical product, it couldn't happen. Now, being empowered with those energies, Steve Jobs was able to go out and connect to a bunch of other people. He also lived in the Silicon Valley, where everybody was operating. If he was living in Detroit, nothing would have happened. So you can see how complicated it is and how there are many factors of just, well, we'll just replicate this. So when it comes to these kind of things, these are the hardest types of things to manifest. Manifesting wealth, manifesting charisma, influencing people very directly. All of this is very difficult to do. So once you get into advanced practices, it all comes down to the occultons. When you do remote viewing, you're reading the occultons that surround matter. People see it as going there and seeing things. No, you're not seeing things. You're working from the occulton level up. The occulton levels, which form all matter, is where you're picking up the energies from, and while you're able to do it at a distance. These are just psychic functionings that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years and has been mislabeled by the military-industrial complex, who had the nerve to take it over after it spends all of its time discrediting it, to then call it remote viewing. Yeah, I'm Joseph McGonagall. I can't find my butt in the dark. So the whole idea is that we have all these people that are involved in these practices, and they don't really comprehend the science behind it because their science doesn't want to verify it. Their wrong science, their incompetent science, their science that has done nothing. So what's interesting, though, is that once you understand this and you start pulling in these energies, and there are these kind of distinct manifestations, which at this particular time come from the same mother of all mothers, which is the occultine energetic field. And the occultine energetic field is what will then manifest direct physical changes, which apparently has been proven now, and it's been proven for many, many years. It's just that it's hard to define it. I don't know anybody who's tried to work with subtle energy radionic consciousness machines who really worked on things that were so physical. Even though there has been some of this work of hunting for minerals and so many other things out there that were done and, of course, swept under the table for many reasons, which you'll get into in further lectures. But we have this distinct that forms physical matter. And of course, emotions and energies and success fields are all physical matter. They're all measurable. They're all physical. To think anything different is, again, a boobish way of thinking of things. You're just a boob. You're just a dummy. So the whole idea is that trying to talk to people like that and going through their intermediate traders like parapsychologists is a waste of time. So the whole idea is that you have to go out and do those things. And what's interesting about this is that the power to change the entire planet is within people's hands now by just going out and using these technologies. But it is not easy to do, and it does take some skill, even though, like anything else, people can be trained to do this at certain levels. I'm not sure how high of the levels, but with a lot of these. But and also, you have to have potent machines, which basically aren't out there. There's been some skilled operators who get some results because they're good at tuning, but they're using, from what I know of, unless they have their own machines, using very primitive technologies that are not really carrying these energetic informational fields in their entirety, so you can really mold. So they're overcoming it because they are just good at this type of technology and tuning in. But what's out there is basically all junk. And even the older models are all junk as well. And there's absolutely no proof that any of this stuff works beyond a certain level. Yes, it works because of the operator. But computerized radionic machines, if you can call those things, have been around for 30 years. What have they done? Well, there really is no research stating any of this stuff, and the manufacturers of these things are all afraid to come out and say what they can do on any level because it becomes very problematical, and of course they're only really interested in making money. So there isn't anything out there that's been verified. There certainly is a lot of anecdotal information of people who have been curing people using radionic machines for 70, 80 years. Well, I guess you could go back to the beginning, which was 100 years ago with the odd, strange variations made by Dr. Abrams, who brought this kind of technology to the public. And those machines were pretty primitive as well, from what we can tell from the older machines. And most radionic machines, there's nothing there. They're not putting out traditional Hertzian fields. They are putting out these occultant energy fields to actually mold matter or change matter from diseased tissue to healthful tissue. These are the type of things. But of course, if you can change the chemical makeup of a human or a biological entity, well, that means that you could do this in all physical. Theoretically, you should be able to change lead into gold. Why not? You're telling the structure what to do there. Now, all of this really has never been overly researched, even though there are people out there doing these kind of research consistently. I doubt if they've reached the lead into gold reality that is out there. We just don't know with people. There's certainly levels of this which are quite fascinating, but there's also a huge degree of failure here. And when most people are tested in these areas to any great degree, they fail consistently. So we are in research to find out how these many people out there are doing things, selling their services, and what is their success rate. There are people out there right now that are using radionic machines to cure people of diseases, and apparently has a fair following. Which, does that mean success? I don't know. People think a lot of things, but they've been doing this for 10 years and making quite a bit of money at it using a radionic machine for health conditions. Yet they refuse to give refunds. So how, if you're that successful, give the few people it doesn't work for their money back. Why are you keeping it? So I have a problem with that, but we're going to find out how real these people are, plain and simple. So, understanding that, we are then able to test people more. And apparently things can be done through digital contacts as well. So this can be done through digital films and other things, so these people claim. So we will find out. People have tools and other things they're offering that claim to do things. And we're not talking about machines that you have to work with. The problem with machines is that these are some things you have to learn how to use. And while we are developing simplistic machines so that people can easily use these, they are still very difficult to use. And if you're trying to use them on yourself personally, well, there becomes a problem here because everybody is so different. So can you make a particular occulton field to affect general biological entities, meaning humans? Or is each human different? Well, we don't know. It's as simple as that. There hasn't been enough research here because of the oppressive scientific field and the governmental administrators that obviously don't want this to happen. So the bottom line is they want to keep you stupid and weak. And this almost puts you to a degree of being equal if you think and extrapolate onto what possibly could happen if you had real technology to make this work. But like everything, there's limitations to so many different things based on so many different factors. But the bottom line is that this is something that's been going on for years. There are books and books of information and research done proving that radionic machines have healed people. Now you say, well, why isn't it everywhere? Well, there's a lot of factors of reason why this isn't happening. And I ask the same question as well. But most of these people, every single one of them who've gotten involved in any of these things, have been persecuted and attacked. And if you think you're just going out and demonstrating your stuff working is going to solve the problem, well, I proved I did this. Did it? Well, first of all, I'm not sure that that's a reality that most people understand. We live in a very corrupt society. And if you start proving stuff, well, your life is not worth anything. So you will be destroyed one way or another. Most of these people were arrested, thrown in prison, and of course, what the game is obviously they take any financial support away from you. When they do this, of course, your life is over with. You can't live in a society, and the more they, everything is connected to bankings, to numbers, they take your money away from you. It's over. The game is over with. There really is nothing left but a person to fight back in the most primitive ways to make their last final statement. But with the right technologies, someone can move dramatically ahead in their life and not be dependent upon a corrupt, evil system that will make them corrupt and evil regardless of where they come from. So the molding or the consciousness machine technology in its very crude form has been here for at least 100 years, and even before that, because what are shamans doing? Well, they go through a process so that they can connect with the occultons, which is an elaborate one. They have to go into deep states of consciousness to connect to these energies. You just can't go outside and say, well, I'm going to change the sky to green. Well, if everybody was able to do that, you can imagine the kind of nightmare that would be. But can you affect the weather? Well, you're damn right. It happens all the time. It's been happening for thousands of years. Thousands and thousands of people have done it. And it's been one proof after another. But it's going to take a studied person to do that. A shaman who has dedicated his life to it. Now, this is not the case as soon as we jump into machine technology. But there is a component. And those that work with occultons have to consider themselves more shaman in terms of contacting higher, stronger fields than buffoonish scientists who get their information out of a limited consciousness book, which is where people are working out of today. But of course, the minute you get into the whole aspect of what is the occult sciences, otherwise known as quantum physics, which they've stolen entirely from all the ancient mystery schools, the alchemists, etc. That's all the energies have been doing all the time. It was this using different energies to mold another energy. That's what alchemy is all about in a simplistic manner. People did this using toxic chemicals, using astrological energies, psychic energies, etc. But to understand it, you have these occulton fields, which are the essence of all life, that you intermix with and control using psions. And psions come from your intentions, which is what quantum physics states. Nothing happens until you're added to the puzzle, and this is true. Because you're creating your own little universe then, which affects others as well. So this is the shamanic aspect and the protective aspect to a large degree. But it goes beyond that because a lot of very ignorant people are accessing this power already. And most of them, sadly enough, are all crazy people because society has pushed them away. And a lot of them are very evil, egotistical. People think they're gods. This happens with all these people, and it is frightening. So the actual control of these energies, the molding of energies, can be done right now with certain psychotronic, radionic, psionic type machines. And that's what these people are doing on what is considered a very low level. Occasionally, some people break through and are able to do some very extreme working of going from the fact of manifesting something, meaning you presented a field around someone and they won the lotto. This does happen. What happens often is you take the biological entity and as such, you change it, meaning someone is dying, now they're not. This is pretty profound. And this is the next level because you're talking about quantum energy machines, otherwise known as occulton molding technology. And doing this, can it come down to a machine process? Well, if it came to that, it would be kind of frightening, and it's kind of there, meaning anybody who is smart enough to get to a certain level can do this. But there are limitations right now that are dramatic because of the dramatic problems with all this stuff is the fact that, that they're using very junk technologies. Even toxic technologies are the commonplace right now. Well, they really haven't figured out how to move the occulton energy, informational, energetic fields at a very strong level. Now, in my research, and I've been working with this for quite so many years now with the availability of laser-based technology, you can move huge amounts of information, and now you can do it very inexpensively. 10 years ago, it cost you $9,000 for a high-level laser. Now you can get one for $20. That was $9,000. So this now allows people, but now nobody is looking into this aspect except, of course, IGOS. So this type of thing, what people are doing is getting some fairly awesome results in some areas using very junk technologies. So we need to completely understand, and we also have to understand that the actual mechanization of these technologies, meaning making them more machine and less consciousness-based, is a big error that all these people do. They want to make all sorts of things machiney, digital readouts, more automatic system. All of this, while is nice at a very certain level, decreases the power dramatically. So it takes the individual, and this is part of the screening. So if you're not really at a higher level consciousness-wise, you're not going to make these things work, and you're going to go fall back into what's considered the machiney reality. Well, this is superior. Like there's something superior about a machine that a human makes, and the machine that you make is better than you. What? That doesn't even make sense. But we're living in that reality, which is quite scary. But getting back to the Occulton consciousness machines, and that's why they're really consciousness machines, there is certainly a understanding, and to think that science is separate from you is also a stupid way of looking at things. You are the science. And of course, that's what quantum bogus physics tells us. Of course, in ancient mystery schools, everyone knew that. It was who was the most conscious person had the most power. And this, of course, goes the same thing with quantum physics. If you are so important as the observer and worker of the experiment, that means you're controlling it, and that means you really state by your consciousness and your observation and your desires what happens to that matter. Does anyone fully get how important that is? So science all comes back down to the human consciousness. And that these machines, while working in a way that assists us, ultimately come down to human consciousness. Can you do a lot of this without machines? Well, of course, that's what shamans did. But shamans always had things like sigils, amulets, other things, which are just types of machines, types of amplifiers. And these are very critical to the process. Now, people have done certain healings without these things. They have done it in a pure psychic realm, but I believe this is inferior because we are beings of tools. We make tools, those tools we make machines with. This assists the process. So you don't have to be so stuck in the entire process and continue the process solely on your own. You amplify what you do. Why not do things easier? Yes, we can walk around the world. I'd prefer to take a plane. Now, is one superior to the other? Well, it gets you where you want to go. But there's all sorts of problems with walking, not to mention the time element. So there is a great superiority in using technology to do something. Ultimately, does it change what happened? I wanted to go to this place. Well, I got there by plane, car, ship, whatever it is, or you walk there. Is the end result changed? Not really, but there are many factors. Maybe you never get there because you can't, of weather conditions or problems. You can't just walk over a mountain. You can fly over a mountain. So there are critical aspects, and the combination of what is considered techno-shamanism, a techno-mage, is very important to understand because you're not science, as we know it now, is bogus and wrong. It hasn't really achieved anything. And again, people look at things around them, they say, well, this is science, this is a special plastic here. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, well, we have all the junk science that created the junk products, which basically is engineering. So we do have things that are engineered that are very important, but that's not science in your traditional sense. That's engineering. You add this to cement and it makes it stronger. Well, that is not science in its purest form. That's engineering. This is where you are taking physical compounds, putting them together to get physical results. How much weight can a bridge carry? Well, that is engineering, which is different than science, and this is very provable. So if you build a bridge and you say, well, it can carry this weight, and you drive a car in there and it can't, well, the car falls into the ocean or river or whatever it is. Or the bridge itself just falls down. Well, you can't say, well, my science was right. It failed. It's obvious. Nobody's going to give you credit. And of course, we have to look at all science that way. It has to manifest something, but things get very complicated once you get out of the strictly physical realities. So the whole idea is that once we get into these theories, which all these boobs out there have been pushing down our throats for literally hundreds of years that are completely and totally false, now we start getting into the new reality. The new realities have a very amazing possibilities here, and not to the fact that you have to go to some sort of higher education to start molding occultons into your reality, depending on the level of physicality those occultons you mold have. Basically, anybody can do it to a certain degree. Now, this in itself could be the ultimate solution for mankind and taking the power out of the power structures. The problem is that it gets into a lot of things I'm not going to cover right now. But replicating technology is here. We've been doing that with, quote, consciousness radionic machines for many, many years. We've been molding occultons for thousands of years. It's now just being understood better by the controller scientists who most likely will pervert this to the highest level they can and have already done with all the science. The entire world is ran by the militaries of whatever country that is. And this isn't just in so-called fascist countries, but the bottom line is that the money to do everything comes from the state. The state is kept in power by the military, and the military is kept in power by the police. So it all comes from this horrible birthing channel. And it's a filthy, stinking, dirty, diseased one. So all the research that everybody likes to talk about, which as far as I'm concerned is worthless, these scientific studies into remote viewing and other things done by the military, which have kept everything secret, and still to this day, we don't really know what any of these programs produced. We have a lot of junk that's been released for their own personal value to get people involved in this so they can cherry pick those people out there that show abilities. But what really happened, what they've done to make sure that there isn't really serious inquiry is they discredited the field. Everybody's a fraud, Uri Geller, and they do it in the most comical way. Who's the spokesman? The ex-spokesman, thank God he's dead, is the unamazing Randy. Well, here's a guy that has no education, didn't graduate high school. He's a magician. Now, how does that give anybody credibility? No scientific background, no training, no nothing. So he's going to expose somebody else. And he's the voice of authority. You notice that none of the skeptics and debunkers or anybody that has any kind of training, any kind of background, and when you look into who is supporting these organizations, well, tends to be military, rich guys from the internet that just made their money, or I should say were just made to have money. And who are they out there? So they actually go on a campaign to fund and assist dumb bunkers so that they can discredit this technology because they don't want anybody else getting into it. So it's very, very complicated of how these, but that's how the world is. Things are not straightforward, or this would be a paradise. And frankly, paradises never really produce anything. Any societies that were based in easy lifestyles were extremely decadent. We see this from Polynesia, who basically didn't have to work very much. And what did they do? They murdered each other and then sat around making laws. Does that sound like happening today in most profitable, societies that are advanced today? Well, what do they do? They'd sit around making laws and killing each other. So this is really what it comes down to. But this technology is here and now, and we will be releasing lots of this, and we'll be having training courses and everything else out there, things that you haven't been able to get and still can't get out there by the many people who are into this area that seem to be only into it for money and really don't have any kind of courage to come out and state what results they get or not, even to the fact of what are you doing in terms of agricultural. So, we can't do this because they're going to come after us. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. The point is you have to get out there and start doing this, and people have been doing it in different areas on very low levels for over 30 years now. But it never seems to mean anything. There doesn't seem to be anybody who's doing it to a level to verify anything. So what is happening with these technologies is quite unknown. And certainly the people selling these things are happy to sell it as they're doing and don't really want to confront anybody. Where is the statistical data? Where are there even a minor amount of proof to technologies like the SE5, who've been around for 35 years and have a fairly cohesive plan? I mean, this person's been selling it himself, not others, for 35 years. And where is the data on it? Well, there is no data on it. Matter of fact, pictures up there of so-called assisting of growth, which are pretty pathetic, have been the same pictures up there for 30 years. Well, what's happening? So, seems to be their major market is in India. And of course, India doesn't allow you to make claims either, but certainly nothing's coming out of there which is more energetic level. So none of this seems to be happening on any level. And of course, this is how society is based. Certain things are kept to a certain elite, whether it is informational or educational, or even tool use, by those people who do not want to bring it out to others because they want to keep it for themselves, or just don't want the misery of potentially confronting other people out there. But nobody does it. And certainly you're not going to get the parapsychologist cowards to do that. They're too busy talking about Prometheus. So they're not going to talk about real technologies that we have right now. And of course, they're beholden to their educational system and the people that brought them along, who for the last 50 years have done nothing. So it goes on and on with the complications of life. And of course, it's meant to be like this because these kind of things are not going to come out there and just be given to everyone. So the actual aspect, the replicating machine technology, has been here for many years, has not been up to the highest level possible because nobody's really tried it. They're not using technologies that can move large informational energetic fields. Well, that is no longer the case. And of course, there has been some people that apparently have bridged the gap of bad tech into figuring out how to do things to manifest on a very strong level using digital energy fields, which are called frequencies by most people, to actually change physical matter. Now, this does seem to be a fact now. Now we have to take it to the next level. And of course, ironically, these people are trying to keep things on the down low, but when you do that, you produce mediocre results and you don't really get any followings. And when you try and seek followings out there, all the doors start to close on you. Everybody is threatened. You're certainly not going to go to academia and they're going to help you in this, because what will happen is when you start bringing out information like this, your career will be ruined. You'll end up on the street. That's how it works, because there certainly isn't any gutsy, there isn't any profound, there isn't any kind of warrior aspects in any kind of academic person that I've ever met. They all tend to be weak-kneed cowards living in the realm of books and libraries, while basically the barbarians are out there killing, robbing, and raping, and they sit in their little library, which they let them exist in, hiding and cowering with their higher thoughts that produce nothing. That's pretty much the history of the world. But the technology is coming, the information is coming. People need to understand all this, and people need to follow the few people out there that are doing anything, which of course is IGOS. The junk that's on the market today, the people producing them tend to be all nut jobs and even Satanists. Most popular, I don't know if it's the most popular, but one of the people who've been putting out a lot of different orgone machines is a noted Satanist. What does that tell you about the industry? A person who has been controlled and backed by all of the black lodges and everything else. So the point is that this is what you're going up against. They've already snagged this, put you in a bad direction to disempower you through their evil belief systems connected to their evil systems in general. What do you think this is going to bring? Well, they've been doing this for years and have achieved nothing. So it's the same old story, but the influence of straight out in your face Satanism, which nobody seems to even care about, is here. And regardless of and of course the other side's been so weak that people just see it as a joke. So they actually see as the positive and powered path, they see the negative path. And that's what's been created, and of course, the public has supported these people. The public is easily harassed by the criminal factors who are out there murdering people in the streets. That's how it works. And of course, nothing happens. And this has been going on for many, many years, 30, 40, 50, 100. It's probably been going on consistently that people are murdered in the streets and the criminals run everything. This is not anything that's happened recently. This is something that's been going on probably since the existence of mankind. But certainly there's never been a potent force for justice out there. It's never happened. And it's unlikely that it ever will. So this comes down to the individual, but the technologies are there as we now go from this ridiculous Newtonian physical put parts together like a puzzle, a physical reality to make this. This is gone now. Hopefully everyone understands that. The next big jump into the non-physical occulton assembly reality brings to us not only the terrors of this kind of technology, but the dream of being able to transmute all matter right here, the alchemical reality of life that's always been out there, which means we can solve all of our problems, meaning you can take toxic radiation, transmute it into harmless. You can take the poisons that are everywhere in this physical reality and transmute them into harmless ingredients. Well, this really solves all our problems. And it is here and here now. How do we go ahead and implement this? Because nobody really wants it. Everybody is afraid, and those who control everything don't see the profit in it. And this has always been the case. While I have free energy, which we've had for hundreds of years, it's called hydrogen power, people. We don't need electric batteries that are horribly toxic. We have hydrogen power, and that can be converted in any gas-burning machine, can be converted into a hydrogen machine. You could have this in your house to generate energy. It's all the problems are solved right now. It's been solved for at least 150 years. Yet nobody looks at, oh, our solution is electric cars. Yeah, we're going to get all these highly toxic, unreliable, dangerous, explosive batteries, putting them in a fancy little design. But the guts of it are the same crap that there's always been. And it doesn't really matter if a car can go 200, 500, or 1,000 miles, which people want for some bizarre reason, when your average trip in your neighborhood is less than 10. But the point is that this is what people claim that it's going to solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. When there are billions and billions of electric car batteries polluting the entire landscape, well, the game will be totally over. We won't have polluted air, we'll just have polluted everything else. So you can see how a fallacy this is. It's not built in truth, it won't last. It's garbage technology, and those foolish people who follow the buffoonish leaders out there who are pushed in front of everybody, given billions of dollars to follow through on crap technologies, is everybody falls in it, calling these kind of idiots geniuses. And they're idiots, and they've achieved nothing. Nothing of the technologies that we have today have went anywhere. Battery technology is still a joke. And the fact that cars are a little different, they drive easier, well, this is nothing new. This is just computerized stuff that's been going on for 50 years. How does that anywhere solve the problem of what an automobile is? So it does create another control factor where everybody is constantly controlled of everything they do, even when they drive. So this is the reality. This is it. So it's a frightening and a fascinating time. And all this is going to come out in the next years to come. And we're going to see how far it gets buried and how few people will learn about it. But as so many things you can see, as you can see on YouTube and other places, the million views are stupid people playing games and cat photos. Doesn't seem to be any movement towards anything of value or some pseudo-religious or pseudo-spiritual nonsense. So whether the consciousness of this very low-level reality that we're looking at will ever come to a higher level, well, who knows? But the bottom line is that this, it plain and simple, is a reality. The understanding of going past the boring quantum physics of that everything is made from energy is to control that energy, replicate it into whatever you desire, and it's here now.